you play very well.
Oh, yeah? So do you. Oh, God, what a dumb thing to say, right? I mean, you say it, you play well, and then right away I have to say you play well. Oh, God, Annie. Well, oh, well. La-di-da, la-di-da, la-la, yeah.
On October 11th, 2025, Diane Keaton, the Oscar-winning actress, filmmaker, and cultural icon whose distinctive voice, eccentric wit, and fearless authenticity made her an iconic figure in American cinema for more than 5 decades, died after a short illness. Born to a spirited, offbeat family in Los Angeles, she was inspired into show business after watching her mother win a Mrs. Homemaker beauty pageant when she was a child. Proof, she said, that, quote, even ordinary people might carry hidden glamour. At 20, Keaton left California for New York to pursue a career in the theater, and she found immediate success. She appeared in the original Broadway cast of Hair in 1968, and then in Woody Allen's Play It Again, Sam, earning a Tony nom. Those early successes led to her film debut in Lovers and Other Strangers in 1970, a modest movie that might have gone unnoticed were it not for her performance catching the eye of a young Francis Ford Coppola, who was then casting The Godfather. Coppola said he was struck by Keaton's wholesome beauty and kinetic, slightly off-kilter energy. He said when he saw her act, he was expecting something vanilla, but what he instead saw was something, quote, deeper, funnier, and more interesting. Coppola cast Keaton as Kay Adams, Michael Corleone's bright, naive girlfriend, who would evolve into an uneasy witness of his moral descent. The Godfather's success brought Keaton widespread attention, though not all of it flattering. Some critics found her performance too restrained, even flat, amid the film's operatic scope. But in The Godfather Part 2, she turned that restraint into an emotional tour de force, as the now disillusioned and desperate Kay seeking to reclaim her independence from Michael's tyranny.
Michael, you are blind. It wasn't a miscarriage. It was an abortion. An abortion, Michael. Just like our marriage is an abortion. Something that's unholy and evil. I didn't want your son, Michael. I wouldn't bring another one of your sons into this world.
During the same period, Keaton's personal and creative life intertwined with Woody Allen's. They met in New York theater and forged a bond built on their shared eccentricities. Allen later said, quote, the minute I met her, she was great, a great inspiration to me. Much of what I've accomplished in my life, I owe to her. Together, they collaborated on 4 films, culminating with Annie Hall in 1977, the role that would define her career. Keaton's portrayal of Annie, charming, neurotic, and self-aware, rewrote the playbook for women in romantic comedy. Gone were the polished, one-dimensional ingenues, and in their place now stood a woman who was messy, flawed, and neurotic, but ultimately relatable and authentic. Her performance won her the Academy Award for Best Actress, and Annie the character became the archetype for portrayals of contemporary women. Over the next 5 decades, Keaton starred in more than 60 movies, intentionally alternating between drama and comedy to resist typecasting. Off-screen, she was equally unpredictable, fiercely private, yet drawn to the public eye through her relationships with some of Hollywood's most powerful men, including Woody Allen, Warren Beatty, and Al Pacino. She never married, saying she valued her independence above all, though she adopted 2 children to whom she was a full-time doting mother. Her fashion, tailored suits, wide belts, and oversized hats became an unmistakable signature, her visual shorthand for her self-possession and creative individuality. She directed and produced films, published photography collections, and pursued projects in architecture and design. Critics and colleagues often remarked on Keaton's emotional honesty and range. Rolling Stone magazine said, quote, she could pivot from comic chaos to piercing stillness in a heartbeat, grounding even her quirkiest characters in something deeply human. Her health had declined significantly in the months leading up to her death, though she remained private about her condition. She nevertheless kept busy, quietly developing new projects until, on October 11th, she suddenly felt quite ill and was taken to the hospital. A short time later, she passed away. Diane Keaton was 79 years old. I'm Jason Beckerman.
I'm Derek Kaufman.
This is Last Days, Diane Keaton.
Numerous figures from the film and entertainment industry paid tribute to Keaton, including Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, Jane Fonda, and many, many others. Goldie Hawn, who co-starred with Keaton in The First Wives Club, wrote, Diane, we aren't ready to lose you. You never liked praise, so humble. But now you can't tell me to shut up, honey. There was and will be no one like you. Father of the Bride co-star Steve Martin posted a simple, heartfelt tribute alongside a photo of the two on set, saying loved, followed by Keaton's own iconic Annie Hall line, la-di-da, la-di-da. Sarah Jessica Parker, who worked with Keaton on The Family Stone, described her as a point of inspiration for countless actresses, adding, I was privileged to witness her singular skill and talent. She made everything around her more alive, more unpredictable, more human. And Woody Allen wrote an article for the Free Press describing Keaton as, quote, unlike anyone the planet has experienced or is likely to ever see again. Jason, we'll talk more about Woody Allen because their careers obviously intertwined to a significant extent. I learned, reading about her, that her initial work with him in 1968, even before Annie Hall, he saw something in her. There's something ineffably unique about Diane Keaton's place in 70s cinema, which was, replete with incredible actresses and performances and gritty, realistic cinema. She stood out even from that.
Yeah, and just to hit on the Woody Allen thing, for obviously his legacy is, to put it quite kindly, controversial.
Complicated. Yes.
But I think it's important to separate that. We'll talk a little bit about that.
We'll talk about
stood
it.
by him, and we'll talk about that for a second in a minute. But their careers are interlinked in a way that, but with the other, I don't think either of them reaches the success that they had.
I think that's right. Woody Allen's films are about a neurotic man, young man typically, sort of 20s, 30s, 40s, and his entanglements with women. I mean, that is what Woody Allen made in terms of films until his later career. And even his later career, he does it sometimes without himself. But Diane Keaton was his muse.
That's right.
That is fair thing to say, and he's one of the most important filmmakers of the 20th century.
And every woman from Scarlett Johansson to a million others in between who
modeled themselves
starred with
after
him
Diane.
were all modeled. He wrote them as Diane Keaton, and they had to do their best sort of Diane Keaton impersonation, not to give too short a shrift to their performances, but in order to fill the role, to fill the shoes that he had written.
That's exactly right. The Godfather was Keaton's breakout role, and perhaps the one for which she remains best known, but her most significant performance is unquestionably Annie Hall. The film earned Oscars for Woody Allen and for Keaton, yet no accolade could fully capture its cultural impact. When Annie Hall premiered in 1977, it immediately became the defining comedy of the era. Film critic Pauline Kael wrote that the movie broke the mold of the genre, turning what had been a boy meets girl story into a portrait of intimacy as it really is, awkward, funny, and fleeting. Roger Ebert called Keaton's performance one of the most charming in the history of cinema, noting that she brought a reality and vulnerability to the screen that women in comedies had never been allowed before. The New York Times hailed the film as a masterpiece of tone, praising Keaton's ability to embody both lightness and gravity, often in the same breath. There's no doubt, Jason, this is the defining movie of romantic comedies. It invented the genre. When Harry Met Sally expanded it into a different realm, but Annie Hall captured the initial tone of what romantic comedy. There were no more screwballs, zany Roman holiday type stuff. This was different.
It's so important, the point that we made in the open, that up until then, women in comedy were typically either incredibly beautiful, one-note ingenues who they could sometimes get themselves into funny
daffy circumstances
that a man had to come in and rescue them or whatever it was, but they were perfect. You even think about somebody like Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's. She is perfect. There is not a hair out of place. And she is obviously a prostitute, and she's got moral deficiencies.
And it's funny, too. The movie is funny, but it's not a romantic comedy in the same way.
She's perfect in her own self. Annie Hall, Diane Keaton and Annie Hall, is totally imperfect. Her hair's wildly out of place constantly. She says the wrong thing. She doesn't mean to. She's quite bright, which is unlike, you never got that from sort of the Audrey Hepburns. She's very bright, but at the same time has all sorts of insecurities that percolate up that you just never saw of women in comedy before. It just changed the archetype.
Yes.
And we'll talk about it more, but you've got sort of Julia Roberts and Emma Stone and some others who all they're doing, and by their own admission, I'm not saying they're not fantastic, by their own admission, they're standing on her shoulders in terms of the characters they portray. You think of Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, she is doing Annie Hall.
Yeah, they're doing their version of Diane Keaton. There's no doubt about it. But you always had in early cinema these stentorian, strong women like Katharine Hepburn,
yes,
who were dramatists, and their movies felt important. And Audrey Hepburn, I will say, changed that in meaningful ways with Breakfast at Tiffany's and Roman Holiday and all of those movies. But you're right, her beauty was too stunning. You know, she would put you on your heels. That was not Diane Keaton. Diane Keaton was fierce, authentic, beautiful in a much, much, much different, understated kind of way.
Less perfect, classical way.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. To this point, for fellow actors, Annie Hall was more than just a movie. It was a turning point for women in film. Meryl Streep once said Keaton, quote, gave women permission to be complicated, while Reese Witherspoon called her the reason I wanted to act, citing Keaton's balance of humor and intelligence as the gold standard for female leads. Julia Roberts and Emma Stone have both cited Keaton as the singular inspiration behind their acting styles, and many younger actresses like Zendaya and Florence Pugh toggle between vulnerability and control in a way that was virtually unknown before Keaton. Nancy Myers, who would later direct Keaton in Something's Gotta Give, said, quote, Diane didn't just redefine what a leading lady looked like, she redefined what a leading lady thought like. She was effortlessly funny, but you could see the world turning behind her eyes. And Greta Gerwig, who is now sort of the biggest female woman in Hollywood, as a director and actress, has called Annie Hall the Rosetta Stone of modern romantic storytelling, saying that Keaton, quote, made neurosis chic, intelligence sexy, and imperfection beautiful. Even decades later, the film's imprint lingers. Cultural historian Camille Paglia described Annie Hall as, quote, the prototype of the postmodern woman, cerebral, self-conscious, but entirely herself. The clothes, the cadence, the vulnerability, all of it became part of the cultural lexicon. Annie Hall wasn't just a character, said filmmaker Nora Ephron, she was a movement. I think it's just, you can't put too fine a point on this. I mean, we go all around and around about it, but how important that movie was and how important she was.
Yeah, we got to talk about the fashion, which you mentioned up top, which you mentioned here, the oversized trousers, the sort of big blazers, those hats. Diane Keaton, the silhouette of Diane Keaton was sort of the look of the feminist movement in a lot of ways in the 70s, because she obviously was gender bending, androgyny in some ways with this sort of outward expression of herself.
She wore men's clothes.
She wore men's clothes, and it was iconic.
Ties and vests and bowler hats.
Yes, that's right. My mother sort of dressed like Annie Hall my whole life, and so I didn't.
Is that right?
Absolutely. My mother with the big ties, and
I had no idea.
It almost seemed fanciful.
Your mother is. I just can't get my head totally around.
She really is. She's changed a lot in her later years. She would not dress like Annie Hall now, but she wore that stuff. She was a single mother, but Annie Hall looked like modern feminism.
Yes,
that's how I thought of her, and it was that look that a lot of women adopted. And for people who are my age, I was born in 1980. That was all we saw. That was how a lot of women dressed.
Right.
So traditionalism, which was everything, it was now more mixed, and so it told you a lot about a person when you saw how they presented themselves to the world. And I thought it was incredible, and really that is her. It is how Woody Allen dressed her, maybe, but it is her.
To get a little nerdy, Camille Paglia, who's like not one to suffer fools and looks at sort of ham-handed efforts at feminism with a very jaundiced eye and is very critical of a lot of people who sort of tiptoe into this space, loved and admired Diane Keaton like nobody else. And I think that's sort of revealing that even somebody like her, who had such a sharp tongue and a sharp pen, allowed Diane Keaton to do this because she saw the authenticity that was behind it. It's really what defines her, is that authenticity.
That's the key to Diane Keaton, because this could have been clownish performance. It could have been cosplay, but it never seemed that way when Diane Keaton wore these outfits. In her movies, she embodied those characters to such an extent. I didn't know her personally. I did see her around Brentwood once in a while.
Yeah,
she does. Yeah. What's so surprising is how healthy she seemed. I saw her at Soul Cycle classes in Brentwood.
Oh, no kidding.
And she would walk out, and she was spry, vibrant.
You were walking outside from the burger place.
Exactly. I was just peering in through the window. But she didn't look frail in any way. She was always a very, very healthy person. Obviously, her health declined rapidly quite recently.
To the cosplay point you made, I pulled this quote. It's from a woman, Esther Zuckerman, who writes for The Times. She memorialized Keaton. She said, the Diane Keaton look consisted of high necklines, oddball takes on traditional male looks, hats, blazers, turtlenecks, button-downs, scarves, and ties. Yet, she said, other women would try to emulate her on red carpets or even in movies, and yet, for the imitators, these ensembles look like costumes. For Keaton, it was her ethos.
It's a great point. It is truly what she embodied. I also want to add one point. She never married, and that was also a big feature of Diane Keaton. She was an independent, authentic person out in the world. She had a dog who she really loved. If you read about her now, lots of stories of her walking her dog. But because she was never defined by being on the arm of a man, she was in Woody Allen movies. She was certainly in The Godfather.
She dated Pacino.
She dated
Warren
extensively.
Beatty. Yeah, exactly.
But she was never just arm candy for them. She was never just a beauty who they carried to red carpets. Diane Keaton was her own thing, and I think that meshed well with the outfits and so forth.
There was some awful rumors tossed her way in sort of the closed-minded 80s and 90s, given the way she dressed, given the fact that she was never married. There were allegations of sort of, sexual fluidity against her,
Sure.
which obviously in today's world is no big deal. At the time, it was used to sort of as weapons to try and bring her down. She never took the bait. She never responded to them. For what it's worth,
she never gave it power as a storyline
right.
about her. Things were said, but she wasn't going to be like, I'm not a lesbian, or yes, I am a lesbian.
Right.
It was just Diane Keaton sort of floated through it all.
Right. And then as time went by and our social norms changed, that became sort of something to be very proud of, that she was very different and very independent and was not here to answer anybody's questions about what she liked and what she didn't like.
Yeah.
Although she obviously liked being on, dating very handsome, powerful men.
She was gorgeous. I mean, we can't forget that about Diane Keaton as well. Keaton did not end up winning another Oscar after Annie Hall, though she did receive 3 other nominations. One was for Oscar-winning drama Reds, in which Keaton played Louise Bryant, the early 20th century socialist. The second was for Marvin's Room, alongside Meryl Streep and Leonardo DiCaprio, playing the faithful daughter left behind to care for her dying father. And the third was for the 2003 romantic comedy Something's Gotta Give, in which a mid-50s Keaton vies for the attention of a 30-something doctor and a 60-something playboy, played by Keanu Reeves and Jack Nicholson, respectively.
Where's Julian?
He's back at the hotel. He said when he saw me with you, he knew that I was still in love with you. What do you have to say about that?
If it's true, my life just got made.
I get it. The Godfather and Annie Hall are better movies. I got it. I love this movie. I still think it's a rewatchable. I can turn it on anytime, pick it up, and I can watch it. I love Nicholson. I love the Keanu Reeves interaction. I thought she was perfect.
It's weird to say this about Something's Gotta Give. I share completely your view of it. It's kind of a perfect movie.
Yeah.
It's all those people clicking at different phases of their career. Diane Keaton, after The Godfather and Annie Hall had sort of pigeonholed her in a certain way, went sort of zany comedy. Like she went into this Nancy Meyers mode. She did Baby Boom. She did Something's Gotta Give. She was First Wives Club.
Right.
She's Father of the Bride. She's the mom and Father of the Bride with Steve Martin.
Wasn't there some heist movie where she and 2 younger actresses robbed a currency exchange or something like that?
She had fun with her career and her persona throughout it. But this movie really stands out because Keanu Reeves as the younger love interest and Jack Nicholson starting to do his thing, right? So he had just done the one where he's cantankerous with Greg Kinnear.
Where he won the Oscar.
Yes.
The James Brooks movie.
I'm sorry.
No, we're gonna get it. This is terrible.
We can't get it right now.
I want. It's 3 words. It's somebody help us out. Any of the 20-somethings in this room, a movie you've never heard of.
Oh my
gosh. Never
we
seen.
need to get to it because
Helen Hunt. They both won Oscars.
Yes, that movie. Greg Kinnear.
Something's Got to Give. About last night. No, it's 3 words.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna really bother me. He won, didn't he?
Yeah.
Good Lord, why are we having this problem, Jason?
It's our age.
Does anyone know it?
Jack Nicholson,
Greg Kinnear, and Helen Hunt.
And
no. Hold on. As good as it gets. Thank you. I apologize, but Lee, this is how things work.
This senior moment is brought to you
This
by
is a
Jared
very
Hall
senior
Silver
moment, and it was just stuck in there. But he had moved into this mode where he was no longer Jack Nicholson of old, where he was the Shining with the wild hair. He was sort of aging, and now he's done about
becoming
Schmidt
more
and
comedic.
So forth.
The whole thing. Yeah.
This is right in that wheelhouse as well, and they are perfect because they're both aging so gracefully towards this like sort of funny phase of their career. I think Robert De Niro has transitioned to that much less successfully than people like Diane Keaton and Jack Nicholson, where he tried to do Rocky and Bullwinkle and Meet the Parents and all that kind of stuff.
Right? Unquestionably. She never, she did a lot of movies and some of them weren't great, but there were never seemed the money grabs. She could have been in every movie she wanted to, and she chose very, and we talked about purposely.
She was discriminating.
And she talked about this. She purposely toggled between drama and comedy. She did not want to get pigeonholed early on as a dramatic actress coming out of The Godfather. That would have been the kind of role she could have gotten. So she does Annie Hall, huge comedy, but then she goes right back to Reds as her next huge role, and so she's going, which is as serious a movie as there is. There's no comedy in Reds at all. And so she's going back and forth her entire career. It's fun that she sort of bookends her career with The Godfather Part 1 on one end and Something's Got to Give on the other.
It's sort of beautiful, right? Yeah. But you're right. Annie Hall, it's not, and The Godfather is a perfect movie. So when you're in The Godfather, you're in maybe the greatest film franchise in cinematic history. There's a heaviness to it, even though it's also fun to rewatch. I love The Godfather. Annie Hall also seems like a perfect little sort of gem of a movie. It's a Best Picture winner, and it's hard to relate to if you're sort of not of that era when you see those outfits and you're like, well, yeah, that's of course Diane Keaton. That's the Rosetta Stone, as Greta Gerwig said. But when you watch something guys again, there's just a lightness to it, and I really do love it, and it's how I was sort of introduced to her, and then I went back and saw all of her classic films.
Yeah. Diane Keaton will always be linked to Woody Allen. She began her career with him on stage in Play It Again, Sam, and a decade later they shared their greatest professional triumph with Annie Hall. They dated and suffered a bad breakup, but in many ways she never left his side. When sex crimes allegations were leveled against Allen, Keaton famously declared, quote, "Woody Allen is my friend and I continue to believe him," later saying that she was, quote, "proud beyond measure of the work they did together." And upon her death, Allen, who rarely speaks publicly about such things, wrote for the Free Press of his profound love and admiration for Keaton, writing in part, "I made movies for an audience of one, Diane Keaton. I never read a single review of my work and cared only what Keaton had to say about it. If she liked it, I counted the film as an artistic success. If she was less than enthusiastic, I tried to use her criticism to re-edit and come away with something she felt better about." For all her shyness and self-effacing personality, she was totally secure in her own aesthetic judgment. Whether she was criticizing a movie of mine or a play of Shakespeare's, she held both to the same standard. If she felt Shakespeare had gone wrong, it didn't matter who or how many sang his praises. It was her own feelings that she went with, and she didn't hesitate to put the knock on the bard. She went on to date a number of exciting men, all of them more fascinating than I was. I went on to keep trying to make the great masterpiece that I am still struggling with when I last looked. The world is constantly being redefined, and with Keaton's passing, it is redefined once again. A few days ago, the world was a place that included Diane Keaton. Now it's a world that does not. Hence, it is a drearier world. Still, there are her movies, and her great laugh still echoes in my head.